Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday Dharma service. And a special welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. We will begin the service with the chanting of Jusege. So I wanted to take this opportunity right now to remind everyone that right after today's service, we will be having Dharma reflection session led by Reverend Umezu. So now we will have the reading of Three Treasures, followed by Sankyemon.
Three treasures. Hard it is to receive a human form. Now we have received it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma. Now we hear it. If we do not receive awakening in this life, in what life shall we do so? Let us reverently take refuge together in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. Together with all beings, may we attain the great way of enlightenment, awakening to the supreme intent of the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. Together with all beings, may we enter the storehouse of Dharma, acquiring wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. Together with all beings, may we become united at the great assembly, being free of all bondage. Hard is it to encounter the supreme, profound, and wondrous Dharma, even in 100,000 million kalpa. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true intent of the Tathagata. Sankyemon. Ninjin ukegatashi imasude ni uku. Buppo kikigatashi imasude ni kiku. この身根性に向かってどせずんば、さらにいずれの章に向かってか、この身をどせん。大衆もろともに指針に参謀に消えし立て祭るべし。自ら仏に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わくは衆生とともに、大道を体現して無常を起こさん。自ら法に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わくは衆生とともに深く教蔵に入りて知恵海のごとくならん。自ら僧に消えし立て祭る。まさに願わくは衆生とともに大衆は通りして一切無下ならん。無常人人微妙の方は百千万号にも愛をことかたし、我今検問し従事することを得たり、願わくは如来の真実義を下し立て祭らん。ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ。
Now we will have a Dharma message given by Reverend Umezu.
Namandabts. 無月光仏の光には少女寛義知恵子、その徳不可思議にして実法性を略せり。The light of the Buddha of unhindered light embodies purity, joy, and the light of wisdom. Its virtuous qualities are inconceivable. It benefits the beings of the 10 directions. Namandabts. Good morning, and thank you to everyone for joining us today at the West Los Angeles Buddhist Temple for our weekly Dharma gathering. For those of you who have been joining us, welcome back to our gatherings now from our summer hiatus. And if you are new today, we welcome you, and we are happy to have you join us today. The passage that I have read today is from Venerable Shindan's Poems on the Pure Land. And it is found in the section where Venerable Shinran is praising the teaching of the larger sutra, which is one of our main sutras that we follow in our tradition. In this passage, Venerable Shinran is clarifying what types of virtuous qualities are inside Namo Amida Buddha, the Buddha of unhindered light. These virtuous qualities are purity, joy, and the light of wisdom. These inconceivable qualities are in contrast to the qualities that we as ordinary beings have, which are our selfish desires or greed, our selfish dislikes, which lead to anger, and the darkness of our ignorance to the truth of reality. Further, Venerable Shinran writes that these virtuous qualities inside Namo Amida Buddha are for the benefit of the beings in the 10 directions, which includes us. As we gather today, we have now observed Fall Ohigan last week, our special fall equinox observance, which means that fall is officially here. And what does fall mean? It means that it is officially pumpkin season. It is the season for pumpkin desserts, pumpkin-flavored foods, and pumpkin-flavored beverages. So every year I look forward to this season because I love pumpkin pie. So I'm always excited for when Costco releases their seasonal pumpkin pie. And I actually got to eat my first slice of pumpkin pie last weekend. So today I would like to share a story about my friend who was learning how to make a pumpkin pie several years ago. So several years ago, at the beginning of October, one of my friends explained to me that it was going to be her turn to be in charge of dessert for her family's Thanksgiving gathering that year. And so she had decided early that she wanted to learn how to make a pie from scratch. From scratch meant the filling and the crust. And she had wanted to learn how to make a pie for a while, so she thought that this would be a good opportunity for her to learn. She knew that her family enjoyed pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, so that was the pie that she wanted to learn how to make. However, she herself was not a huge fan of pumpkin pie, so she didn't think she would be a good judge of whether or not a recipe was good. And because she knew that I liked pumpkin pie, she asked me if I would be willing to be a taste tester, as she tried out all the different recipes. And of course, I agreed. So Marie and I went to her house for dinner one day, and after dinner, she served us her first attempt at baking a fresh pumpkin pie. Now, the pie for her first time, it was pretty good, but the recipe that she used was a unique recipe, and it wasn't, the traditional taste of pumpkin pie that I was used to. And so I expressed to her that I was worried that if she was wanting to serve a traditional pumpkin pie, if that's what her family was expecting, then maybe this recipe that she had chose wasn't the best recipe. And I told her my thoughts on, the consistency of the filling and the crust, and she had told me the trouble she had with baking the crust and her thoughts on the filling. And since I had baked pumpkin pie from scratch before, that's one of the reasons that she asked me my opinion. And so I told her the recipe that I use, and I shared my recipe with her. And from there, she expressed that she felt like she had a good starting point. She knew what kind of consistency she was supposed to go for with the crust and the filling. So over the weeks following that, leading up to Thanksgiving, my friend had worked very hard trying out various different pie recipes, pie crust recipes, and different filling recipes. And she was trying to make the best pumpkin pie that she could. Of course, all the different recipes had different ratios of ingredients and different methods. And as she went through the recipe, she started to understand what worked best for the flavor and consistency that she wanted her pie to be for her family. She selected the parts of different recipes that she thought were the best. And by the time Thanksgiving rolled around, she had perfected the pie for her family, and her family loved it. And during this whole process of her making this pie, I was really impressed and inspired by my friend's desire to make the best pumpkin pie possible out of her own dedication, love, and care for her family. And her desire to make this perfect pumpkin pie reminds me of the story of Dharmakara Bodhisattva creating Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Buddha, for the sake of all beings, for all of us. Dharmakara Bodhisattva, as it is told in the larger sutra, wanted to find a way to truly help all beings remove their roots of suffering and afflictions. In the larger sutra, it is told that out of care and compassion for all beings, Dharmakara Bodhisattva visited all the various Buddhas and Buddha lands and chose the best aspects and best virtues of each land. After visiting all the lands and selecting only the best aspects of each, Dharmakara Bodhisattva contemplated for eons what we call 5 kalpa, which is an inconceivable amount of time to us ordinary beings. And after this time, decided on 48 vows, namely the 18th vow, which is to save, ultimately, completely save all beings from the afflicted and impure realms. And just as my friend worked continuously and tirelessly to make the best pumpkin pie for her family, Dharmakara Bodhisattva also worked continuously and tirelessly to establish and fulfill the unsurpassed vows and Buddha land for the sake of all beings. Once my friend perfected her pie became a manifestation of her love and care for her family. The pie itself was an expression of a love for her family. Thus, it was filled with her love and care. Similarly, once Namo Amida Buddha manifested, Namo Amida Buddha itself became an expression of pure compassion and empathy for all beings. And inside of it are the inconceivable virtues of purity, joy, and wisdom. And just like my friend learned how to make a pie not just for her own benefit, but also for the benefit of others, so too did Dharmakara Bodhisattva become Amida Buddha. Dharmakara's perfection of Dharma wisdom was not just for themselves, but also for the benefit of all the countless beings in the 10 directions who have been experiencing the main 3 root causes of unhappiness: the selfish desire, which leads to greed, the selfish dislikes, which lead to anger, and the ignorance of the true nature of existence. And this type of being includes myself. It is because someone like me exists that Namo Amida Buddha manifested itself in order to send forth these virtuous qualities of purity, joy, in the light of wisdom, in the form of its name, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Buddha, which can be heard anywhere, anytime, by anyone open to hearing it. It is especially for those of us who are born in such a defiled time and condition that we have no physical Buddha to follow for ourselves in our land. When we are able to sincerely recognize how and why Namo Amida Buddha came about, and when we truly meet with this Buddha for ourselves, we can begin to truly rely on Namo Amida Buddha as our foundation, our guide and mirror, continuously helping us to see what we cannot see in ourselves, opening ourselves up to learn more about the nature of myself and the world that I live in. I think that this is the true, pure, compassionate mind of Namo Amida Buddha. The compassionate mind of true wisdom that enables me to see who I truly am as a being who has been experiencing the main 3 root causes of my unhappiness, the selfish desire, my selfish dislikes, and my ignorance to true nature. And since the beginning, and a being who is embraced within this compassionate mind, so that I too can attain Buddhahood and do not have to continue to endlessly experience these causes of unhappiness for further lifetimes. This is the compassionate mind that Shakyamuni Buddha, the 7 Buddhist masters of our tradition, and Venerable Shinran hope that all people will be able to encounter in their lifetime. It is the Buddha of unhindered light that is full of purity, joy, and wisdom, which enables us as ordinary beings to encounter the true Buddha Dharma because we are without a physical Buddha in our life. So as we continue to gather and listen to hear the Nembutsu teaching, I hope we can all remember that we are the recipients of this activity of Buddha's compassionate mind that is full of these inconceivable spiritual virtues, which are being directed to us so that we too can become Buddha. And by becoming Buddha, we become part of the activity that continues to share the true Buddha Dharma with all beings. And in that, we can experience the purity, joy, and wisdom of the Nembutsu together and become part of the activity that shares this teaching with those that come after us. So I'd like to now thank you very much for allowing me to share my understanding and appreciation of the Nembutsu teaching with you today. And I would like to invite you to put your hands together in reverence as I reread Venerable Shinran's words. The light of the Buddha of unhindered light embodies purity, joy, and the light of wisdom. Its virtuous qualities are inconceivable. It benefits the beings of the 10 directions. Naman Dabts, Naman Dabts, Naman Dabts, Naman Dabts, Naman Dabts.
Thank you, Reverend Umezu, for your Dharma message this morning. Now we will have Reverend Takata giving his Dharma message in Japanese.
どうぞ皆さん合唱してください。真は願より生ずれば、念仏成仏自念なり、自念すなわち法度なり、正大涅槃疑わず等、ナマンダブス、ナマンダブス。皆様おはようございます。ちょうどお彼岸を迎えまして、気候も涼しくなり、仏法をお聞かせいただくにはちょうどいい時節となりました。浄土真宗ではちょっと難しい言葉になりますが、信心正因という言葉があります。信心というのが、まさにですね、正しく、私たちがお浄土に生まれさせていただく因である、原因である、種であるということなんですけど、このようにですね、信心という言葉がですね、極めて重要な意味を示します。で、浄土真宗ではよく信心のことを仏様より賜りたる信心というふうにお聞かせいただきます。つまり信心というのは仏様からいただく信心である、与えられる信心であるということです。で、他の仏教の宗派でも信心という言葉をよく使われますが、他の宗派さんでは信心というのは仏様よりいただく信心ではなくて、自分自身で起こす信心であるというふうに説かれます。ですから仏様より賜りたるいただく信心、そして自分で起こす信心とでは大きな違いがございます。ご存知のように親鸞上人は得度をいただかれてから比叡山で20年という長い間修行をされました。そして自ら行を修することによって自分で信心を起こして、そして仏になる道を目指されました。ですが厳しい修行をすればするほど 自分の醜い心が明らかになり、自らの修行で仏になることはできないと悟られて、そして自ら起こす信心ではなくて、仏様から賜りたる信心の見教えへと大きく転換されたことでした。私たちは親鸞上人の見教えをお聞かせいただき、親鸞上人を浄土真宗の宗祖、あるいは開祖として親鸞上人、上人という尊称をつけて、尊敬の念で親鸞上人というふうにお呼びさせていただきます。ですが、親鸞上人は仏様から見れば、親鸞上人ご自身も含められて、すべての生きとし生けるものは煩悩具足の凡夫であると信知されたことでした。そして親鸞上人はいろんな書物を書いておられ、その中でご自身のことを煩悩具足、凡夫というふうに説かれておられます。一つ例を挙げてご紹介させていただくと、親鸞上人が言われているのは、凡夫というのは迷いの根源が満ち満ちて、欲も多く、怒り、腹立ち、そねみ、妬む心ばかりが絶え間なく起こって、まさに命が終わろうとするその時まで止まることもなく、消えることもなく、そして絶えることもないというふうに説かれておられます。で、この煩悩具足ということですね、ちょっとお話しさせていただきたいと思うんですが、このお内陣をですね、見られると、仏様の前の机ですね、この前の机のことを前褥というふうに呼ぶんですけど、この前の机を見ていただくと、この机の真ん中にはお香を焚く香炉があります。そしてこの香炉の隣両脇には仏様の知恵の光を示すお灯明、そしてその反対側には仏様の慈しみの心を示すお花が飾られてあります。で、この3つのお正言のことを三つ具足というふうに、専門用語ですが、そのように言います。で、この三つ具足の三つというのは、この今お話ししました香炉とですね、お香を焚く香炉が真ん中にあって、ろうそく立て、そして花を生ける花品というんですが、この3つのお正言のことを、三つ具足の3つという言葉で示しております。そして三つ具足の具というのは、料理をされる方でしたら、具材をですね、料理をされる前に皆さん集められて、そして料理をされると思うんですけど、三つ具足の具というのはその料理をされる具材の具と同じで、いつも備わっているという意味です。で、三つ具足の足というのは、足という字を書くんですけど、これはどういう意味かというと、足りているということです。ですからこの三つ具足というのは、仏様の前にいつもですね、この3つのお正言が備わっているということです。で、この三つ具足の具足と同じ字を書いてですね、親鸞上人はご自身のことを煩悩具足の凡夫というふうに示されました。ですから親鸞上人もですね、その三つ具足と同じように、いつもですね、煩悩、自分を悩ます心がですね、醜い心がいつも満ち満ちて備わっているということで、死ぬ時までこの煩悩をずっと持ったまま私たちは生きているんですよということを示されたわけでございます。そして比叡山で20年間厳しい修行をされた中で、自身は煩悩具足の凡夫であり、そして一点の曇りもないきれいな心を自分で起こすことは不可能であると悟られて、自身を煩悩具足の凡夫であると信知されたことでした。そしてもう一つお内陣のお話をさせていただくと、皆様方からお内陣を見られて、真ん中に仏様が立っておられます。そして仏様の右側にはですね、皆様のカメラで見えるかどうか分かりませんけど、右側には親鸞上人の御絵がかかっております。そして 左側には蓮如上人の護衛がかかっております。で、私が今からですね、約35年ほど前に京都でお得度をいただいた時はですね、本願寺の先生方に仏様のお内陣の右側は親鸞上人の護衛がかかっている方であって、左側は蓮如上人がかかっている方ですよというふうに習ったわけです。それがですね、最近その京都の本願寺がですね、そのお内陣の右側と左側を反対にされたわけです。というのは、私から見たらお内陣の仏様の右側におられるのは親鸞上人、左側が蓮如上人ですが、皆様ご存知のように、このお内陣というのは仏様のお浄土の世界を示しております。ですからお荘厳からお仏具すべてですね、その仏様を中心としてお荘厳されていないといけないわけです。で、私たちから見たら右側は親鸞上人の方になりますが、仏様から見ると右側は反対側の蓮如上人になるということですね。ということで、最近本願寺がこのお内陣の右側と左側を変えられたというふうに聞いております。で、このようにですね、私たちはいつもですね、自分が中心になってですね、自分の都合のいいように、こっちは右、こっちは左で、私はこれが好きだ、嫌いだ、これがいいな、これが悪いなというふうにですね、いつも自分が中心となって物事を決めてしまってですね、一点の曇りもない信心を起こすようなきれいな心を持つことはできないということですね。で、そのようにすべてのことに対して、分別という言葉がありますが、分別というのは分け隔てする心を持つ煩悩具足の我らのために、法蔵菩薩が48の願いを立てられて、生きとし生けるもののすべてを必ず救いますよという誓いを起こされて、そしてその願いを成就され、阿弥陀仏となられ、そして現に私どもを救おうとお働きくださっておられます。で、この仏様は私たちの分別がある心とは違って無分別と言いまして、その分け隔てする心なくですね、生きとし生けるもののすべて、どんな人でも必ず救いますよという誓いを立てられました。で、その願いのことをですね、本願というふうに呼ばせていただきます。そして仏様の知恵と慈悲に限りのないお働きのことを他力というふうに言うわけですが、この他力というのは、仏様のお働きのことですね。で、私たちは仏様のお働きによって信心を賜るのです。で、今日最初にですね、ご三代に親鸞上人がお書きになられました和賛をいただきました。その和賛の一番初めに、信は願より生ずればとお言葉をいただいております。信心というのは願より生ずるということですね。願というのは仏様の願いから生ずる。つまり私が起こすものではなくて、仏様からいただくものであるということを、親鸞上人は仰せになっておられます。で、先週、桑原先生がお彼岸でご教示くださいましたように、日本では阿弥陀如来、阿弥陀様のことを、仏様のことをよく親に例えられます。で、親という漢字は、先生もおっしゃいましたが、3つの漢字からなっていて、いつも木の上に立って見ているというふうに、そういうふうに親という字が書かれます。で、お寺でもですね、皆さんお内陣を見られると分かりますように、阿弥陀様が一番高いところに立っておられます。で、これは仏様が私たちを見下ろしているんじゃなくて、いつでもどこででもですね、すぐに私たちを救えるようにと高いところから見ておられるということです。で、私の田舎でも仏様のことを親様とお呼びになられる方がたくさんおられます。 親と子どもの関係というのは、例外を除いて切っても切ることはできないです。親は生涯を通して子どものことを心配していつも気にかけてくれております。で、子どもは幼い時、子どもの時、小さい時だけじゃなくて、いくつになっても大人になっても子どもは子どもです。その親の心、いつも子どものことを願っている親の心のことを、親心というわけですが、信心というのもこの親心と同じようなものです。ですから私のお父さんとお母さんがですね、私のことをいつも気にかけてくれている、その親心をですね、自分自身で私は起こすことはできませんが、そのお父さんお母さんの気にかけてくれているその心を知ったときですね、その親心が私の心の中に入ってくるということですね。ですから、どれだけ親が子供のことを思っていても、子供が親の方を気にせずにですね、好き勝手にしていれば、親に対しての感謝の念は出てきません。でも親が私のことを常に思っていてくれる、心配してくれているという親心をいただいたときに、初めて親に対して仏様に対してありがとう、南無阿弥陀仏というお念仏がこぼれるわけです。で、親鸞上人が、その親心である信心というのは、願より生ずればと願い、仏様の生きとし生けるものをすべてを必ず救いますよという大きな大きな慈しみの心を持って、起こされた願いから起こるものであると、仰せでございますように、親様阿弥陀様からの賜り物であるといただいて、その親心である仏様の願いを毎日の日暮らしの中でお聞かせいただきましょう。本日はようこそのお参りでございました。どうぞ合唱ください。ナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツ。
Thank you, Takata Sensei, for your Dharma message this morning. Next, we will have the reading of Ryogemon.
Ryogemon by Master Renyo. We rely upon Amida Buddha with our whole heart for the enlightenment in the life to come, abstaining from all sundry practices and teachings, and giving up the trust in our imperfect view. There is no doubt that the assurance of enlightenment comes at the very moment we entrust and we recite the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, in joy and gratitude for the Buddha's compassion. We also acknowledge gratefully the benign benevolence of our founder and succeeding masters who have led us to live in this profound teaching, and we do now endeavor to follow throughout our lives the way laid down for us. Ryoge Shitsugon. もろもろの造業雑種自力の心を振り捨てて、一心に阿弥陀如来我らが今度の一大事の御所御助け将来と頼み申して候。頼む一年の時往生一条御助け事情と存じ、この上の称名はご納者と存じ、喜び申し候。この断り長も申し訳候こと、ご解散承認ご出世のご恩、次第相乗の前時式の朝からざるご関係のご恩と、ありがたく存じ候。この上は定めを課せられる王のきて、一号限り守り申すべく候。ナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナ。
Now for announcements. On October the 10th at 10 o'clock, we will be having our Eshini Kakushini Takekokujo Memorial Service. And our guest speaker is Reverend Chiemi Onikura Blai, speaking in both English and Japanese. And she is the minister's assistant for Twin Cities Buddhist Sangha. Next, on October the 23rd, from 10 to 12, is the Southern District BEC Tri-Temple Seminar, and the theme is Jodo Shinshu Rituals on Death and Dying. And the guest speaker is Reverend Katsuya Kusunoki, who's the Rinban of Seattle Betsuin Buddhist Temple. Now we offer several classes, study classes. The first one is Shoshin Nembutsuge, Hymn of True Shinjin and the Nembutsu. And this is on Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8. The instructor is Reverend Koho Takata. And the next session will be on September the 29th. Then for those of you who can't make the Wednesday evening study classes, there's a Saturday class offered from 11 to 12. And the next session is October the 16th. Every second and fourth Monday from 7 to 8, we have yoga at the temple. And these are all free classes. And then finally, I've got t-shirts. The temple is selling t-shirts with our newly designed logo. It's $20 each, and we have plenty, so please submit your orders. Now, there are two flyers that are not on the screen. The first one is another study session titled The Basic Teaching of Jodo Shinshu, and 3 Pure Land Sutras. This is on Thursday evenings from 7 to 8. The instructor is Reverend Yuta Furumoto, who's the resident minister at Senshin Buddhist Temple. And last, the Jodo Shinshu International Office that presents Buddhist perspectives on empathy. And they have 3 speakers. The first is Reverend Koe Umezu, who's the assistant minister of West LA Buddhist Temple. Next is Todd Miwa McIntosh, humanitarian and founder of the charity Bare Necessities, and Camille Patting, who's the minister's assistant minister at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. This is going to be held on October the 2nd at 11 o'clock. And it says to join them for the conversation in the Jodo Shinshu Buddhism Club on the Clubhouse app. So with that, concludes today's service. Again, thank you for joining us. And please, if you can, come back in 5 minutes. We will be taking a short 5-minute break, at which time we will have our Dharma reflection session led by Reverend Umezu. So we will see you in 5. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Hi. Okay. So I have a camera here that I'm talking into, and you should all be able to see my PowerPoint. And then on the side, if you see, I'm not sure if you're going to see my face, but if I'm looking towards left, it's because I'm looking at the monitor with all the Zoom faces. So thanks for staying on and joining us for our Dharma reflection session. And again, every week we're trying out new setups to try to get this to work the best for everybody. So thank you very much for your patience. To start the session, I would like to invite everyone to put your hands together, Gasho, in reverence as we recite Buddha's name. Namandalps, 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 namandalps. So good morning, everybody. And again, welcome back and thank you for your patience. And we're so happy that you were able to join us today for our reflection session. So we are continuing on with Gobunsho, the letter that we have been reading for the last couple weeks. If you haven't been joining us, no worries. We try to do a review, and we've been just going through this letter little by little. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of catch up to what we've been talking about. Quick review. Gobunsho is a Japanese word, and it refers to a collection of 80 letters written by Master Renyo, who was the 8th Gomonshu, or 8th head of our tradition. So he lived in the 1400s. And his 80 letters were compiled. He had 200-something letters, but out of 200-something letters, 80 of those letters were compiled into 5 fascicles, 5 booklets. And that collection of letters is what we refer to as Gobunsho. And we've been taught that these letters were supposedly written to everyday people in their everyday language, clarifying Venerable Shinran's teachings, our founder's teachings, in a way that everybody could understand. So through this reflection series, we have been going through several different letters, and we are currently on the 7th letter. In English, the translated title is Attaining the Entrusting Heart. And so we will be continuing with this letter today. So we've only talked about this letter once, so this is our second time continuing on. So this is part 2. So the letter on attaining the entrusting heart. In Japanese, this letter was originally titled Shinjin Gyaku Toku Sho. So Shinjin, as I think you may have heard this word before, a brief, rough translation or meaning of this word is belief or faith, trust or confidence. Gyaktoku has, or as you can see, Shinjin in this letter, the translators have chosen entrusting heart. Gyaktoku, some translators often translate this word as attain or to reach. However, as I will go through again, that this is a little bit maybe not the best translation based on my understanding and opinion of what these characters mean. And sho, letter, it denotes a letter or section, so it's like a counter. So it's a letter on attaining or reaching Shinjin, or this entrusting heart. Master Renyo's letters, or when they were compiled into 5 fascicles, were all put in chronological order. However, there were a group of letters that were undated, so the dates are unknown. This is one of those such letters, and so it is in the fascicle, the 5th fascicle, which is the undated letter. So it is letter number 5 of the 5th fascicle of the collection. So it's an undated letter. So something I went over last time, which I would like to go over quickly again, is a note about attaining. So our sincere recognition or believing or trusting or accepting of this working of Namo Amida Butsu in our hearts and minds and life is what it means to, attain the entrusting heart or Shinjin. However, as I mentioned, Gyakutoku has a little bit of it can mean attaining. It's not necessarily wrong, but I think that we in our everyday language have a image when we hear the word attain, right? That we're like grasping for something, or it's something we grab and we hold on to. We've attained it. But gyakutoku, gyaku, it's a little bit softer than that. So gyaku has this character gyaku has the meaning of to catch or to obtain, seize, capture, but more, something received. We have it because we've received it. And toku means to get or acquire, to gain, to affect, to attain, or it can have the nuance of to know or to realize, to understand or to apprehend or to grasp, right? So gyakutoku as a compound word, has more of the nuance of to obtain and to realize or to get or to actualize, but not from anything that we're going out there and grasping, right? We've attained it through receiving it. So we've gained a certain benefit. We've received a certain benefit. So it has more of that nuance. So when we see the word attain, I would like to try to encourage us to all keep that nuance in mind. So again, I would like to present the main text of the letter. Attaining the entrusting heart lies in understanding the 18th vow. To understand this vow means to understand what Namo Amida Butsu is. And so when one takes refuge, that is Namo, in Amida, in one thought moment, making aspiration and directing virtue is implied. This means that Amida Tathagata directs virtue to us, foolish beings. This is taught in the larger sutra as bringing all sentient beings to the attainment of virtues. So it follows that all karmic evil and blind passions which we have given rise to since the beginningless past are completely extinguished by the inconceivable vow power. Hence, we dwell in the stage of non-retrogression, or the stage of the truly settled. This is the meaning of the statement, we attain nirvana without severing blind passions. This teaching is unique to our tradition, and so should not be discussed with followers of other schools. This we should carefully bear in mind, humbly and respectfully. So this is one of the English translations of this letter, Attaining the Entrusting Heart. And there are several other translations, but this is the one we will be using today. So last time I pointed out 3 main points of consideration. The first paragraph is dealing with, or trying to teach us about the essence of the 18th vow and Namo Amida Butsu. Next, today what I hope to go over with all of you is that to reflect on Amida Tathagata bringing all beings to the attainment of virtues. And then next time we will talk about attaining nirvana without severing blind passions. So again, continuing on with this session, part 2. The passage I would like to focus on today is this means that Amida Tathagata directs virtues to us, foolish beings. This is taught in the larger sutra as bringing all sentient beings to the attainment of virtues. So bringing all beings to the attainment of virtues is a quote that Master Renyo is quoting from the larger sutra. So Master Renyo is emphasizing the aspect that Amida Tathagata is directing the spiritual virtue needed for us to be liberated from samsara, and that this claim is supported by what is written in the larger sutra. So in order to move forward, I would like to take one step back and review a little bit about what we talked about last time. So what is the 18th vow? So the 18th vow is the main essence or crux of this tradition that we call Joro Shinshu, this Joro Shinshu teaching. So again, Joro Shinshu is a Japanese word, but the general English translation is the true essence of the Pure Land Way. And the 18th vow is the vow or promise that Amida Buddha made to ultimately liberate sentient beings from their endless suffering. And this is a teaching that Shakyamuni Buddha extolled in the larger sutra of immeasurable life. And in the larger sutra, the story of Dharmakara is told that Namo Amida Buddha, in its causal state of Dharmakara Bodhisattva, declared the desire to universally liberate all beings in the 10 directions from their roots of suffering. So Dharmakara Bodhisattva compassionately made 48 vows, declaring that if these vows were not fulfilled, if the followers did the prescribed practices of these vows but were not born in the Pure Land of the true Dharma, then the Bodhisattva Dharmakara would not manifest itself as a Buddha. So this is the wording of the 18th vow in the sutra, or the translation of such. If, when I attain Buddhahood, beings of the 10 directions who sincerely and joyfully entrust themselves to me desire to be born in my land and call my name, even as little as 10 times should not be born there, may I not attain perfect enlightenment. Excluded, however, are those who commit the 5 grave offenses and abuse the right Dharma. So this is the vow that Dharmakara Bodhisattva made, as a Buddha, the Buddha was going to bring all beings into the realm of purity so that they may become Buddha themselves. And if the beings called out the name Namo Amida Buddha, but were not born in the pure realm to attain Buddhahood, then Buddha itself would not be Buddha. And then later on in the sutra, there is a passage that says this vow was fulfilled. All living beings who have heard the name rejoice in Shinjin and think of the Buddha even once through its sincere merit transference, aspiring to be born there, immediately become assured of birth and dwell in the stage of non-retrogression. But excluded are those who have committed the 5 grave offenses and abused the right Dharma. So last time also I pointed out 2 points to be aware of that we should be try to reflect on. So first is Dharmakara Bodhisattva practiced for millennia to perfect its wisdom of the Dharma, so that the Bodhisattva, as a Buddha, could compassionately share its accumulated wisdom and virtue with all beings. And the second point was that upon perfecting the virtues of wisdom and compassion, and the universal mode for all beings to attain Buddhahood themselves, Dharmakara attained Buddhahood and became the reverential Buddha of immeasurable light, which represents or means wisdom, is synonymous with wisdom, and immeasurable life, which means compassion or empathy. And that the reverential Buddha of immeasurable wisdom and immeasurable compassion or empathy is what Namo Amida Buddha means, or we pronounce it Namo Amida Butsu in our tradition, since we've received this tradition from Japan. So today I would like to focus a little bit on this first point that I presented last time, that Dharmakara Bodhisattva practiced for millennia, for eons, to perfect its wisdom of the Dharma. So we've talked several times over the few other sessions about the vow, how Buddha spent time to just create the vows, but we haven't really talked about the fulfillment of that vow, what practices Buddha did. So real quickly, again, just pointing out the last section of making aspiration and directing virtue. So through our sincerely taking refuge in Namo Amida Butsu, which means to believe or trust and accept Buddha as our guide and foundation, we are inspired by Buddha to aspire to ultimately be liberated from our roots of suffering. So in other words, we are inspired to become Buddha ourselves. And Namo Amida Butsu offers this path through what we call birth in its pure Dharma realm, or pure land. And we are inspired to aspire to be born in the pure land to become Buddha. And so this directing virtue is what I want to talk about today. So what is this virtue? What did Dharmakara Bodhisattva practice to pass on to us, right? So I'm going to read, this is a little bit dry, but if you can just hang on, I want to read the passage from the larger sutra today. So the larger sutra states, for inconceivable and uncountable kalpa, Dharmakara cultivated countless meritorious acts of bodhisattvas. No thought of greed, anger, or harmfulness arose in its mind. The bodhisattva cherished no impulse of greed, anger, or harmfulness. The bodhisattva did not cling to any form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or object. Abounding in perseverance, Dharmakara gave no thought to the suffering to be endured. Having few desires, Dharmakara knew contentment and was devoid of greed, anger, and ignorance. Always tranquil in a state of samadhi, the bodhisattva possessed wisdom that knew no impediment. The bodhisattva was free of all thoughts of falsity and deception. Gentle in countenance and loving in speech, Dharmakara perceived people's intentions and was attentive to them. The bodhisattva was full of courage and vigor, and being resolute in their acts, knew no fatigue. Seeking solely that which was pure and undefiled, Dharmakara brought benefit to all beings. The bodhisattva revered the three treasures and served their teachers and elders. The bodhisattva fulfilled all the various kinds of practices, embellishing themselves with great adornments, and brought all sentient beings to the attainment of virtues. So I've put in bold these words that Master Renyo quoted in his letter. So it's found in this section. And the quote continues, dwelling in the reality of emptiness, formlessness, and non-desire, Dharmakara did not harbor or give rise to any concept. Thus, the bodhisattva observed that all things are like illusions. Abstaining from using abusive language that would harm themselves, harm others, or harm both, the bodhisattva cultivated the use of good speech that would benefit themselves, benefit others, and benefit both. Abandoning their kingdom and renouncing the throne, Dharmakara completely gave up wealth and pleasure of the senses. Dharmakara practiced the 6 paramita and taught others to do so. For innumerable kalpa, the bodhisattva accumulated merit and collected virtue. Wherever the bodhisattva was born, immeasurable treasures appeared spontaneously as the bodhisattva wished. Dharmakara guided innumerable sentient beings and firmly placed them in supreme true enlightenment. So I know that was a little bit much, but the point of learning this story, I think, is for us to be able to reflect on 2 things. One, what bodhisattvas normally have to do to become Buddha, right? So all of these practices are what bodhisattva did to become, bodhisattva in general, people or beings that wish to become Buddha, endured all of that practice, right? And the second point I think it's supposed to help us to understand is to reinforce how and why this Amida Buddha is trustworthy and pure, because Dharmakara Bodhisattva completed all of those practices completely over millennia, over lifetimes. So just real quickly, I want to go through, just a list of everything that Bodhisattva Dharmakara did that was told in this story. So Bodhisattva Dharmakara practiced having no thoughts or impulse of greed, anger, or harmfulness. Did not cling, was not attached to any form or sound or smell or taste, touch, or object. Persevered and gave no thought to the suffering to be endured. So Bodhisattva lived lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, continuing this practice for the sake of themselves and all beings, and did not mind suffering over and over and over because they hoped to help all beings. And Bodhisattva was content and devoid of greed, anger, and ignorance. So those three poisons that we are taught that we have, right? Through this practice, they became tranquil and always in a state of samadhi, so a state of tranquility and peacefulness. And came to possess a wisdom that knew no impediment. So there was a wisdom that was, right, immeasurable, became free of all thoughts of falsity and deception. So truly seeing things as they were, not through this ego lens that we have, our selfish lens. Became gentle in countenance and loving in speech. Became able to perceive people's intentions and be attentive to them. So came to see what was in people's hearts and was able to address those issues. Became full of courage and vigor. So there was nothing that Bodhisattva Dharmakara did not feel that they could not do in terms of helping others. Became resolute in their acts and knew no fatigue. So never got tired, never became tired of guiding others. Sought only that which was pure and defiled for the benefit of all beings. So no longer thinking about only themselves, oh, I want this or I want that, but truly going after pure and undefiled thoughts and actions so that they could be the pure Buddha for all beings. Revered the three treasures, right? Took refuge in the other Buddhas, the Dharma, and all the Sanghas. Served teachers and elders, fulfilled the various kinds of practices, and embellished themselves with great adornments. So those adornments are, it's a little bit maybe not appropriate to talk about right now, but the Pure Land has adornments, and it's things that help us to become aware of the depth and the awesomeness, I guess, of the teacher and the land. Came to dwell in the reality of emptiness, formlessness, and non-desire, and did not harbor or give rise to any concept, observing that all things are like illusions. So truly seeing things as they are, and not just what Bodhisattva wanted them to be. Right? Abstained from using abusive language that would harm themselves, harm others, or both. And cultivated good speech that would benefit themselves, benefit others, and benefit both parties. Abandoned their kingdom and renouncing the throne, completely giving up wealth and the pleasures of the senses. So, in other words, money and power, conventional money and power was not in their mind at all anymore. And they practiced the 6 paramita and taught others to do so. And so, for innumerable kalpa, it is said, the Bodhisattva accumulated this merit, did this merit practice. And as they lived over and over and over and did these merit practices, then as they kept reaching the next step, they were collecting virtue, spiritual virtue. And so they did this until they perfected their virtue. And so wherever the Bodhisattva was born, as they reached the higher and higher levels, the immeasurable treasures appeared spontaneously as Buddha wished. And again, treasures, I don't think refers to jewels or money or, conventional, what we think of treasures, but true Dharma, that Bodhisattva could see the true Dharma. And through this, and through all of this time, Dharmakara was guiding innumerable sentient beings, guiding them to supreme true enlightenment for themselves as well. So that was Dharmakara Bodhisattva's practice, right? As I mentioned, Dharmakara Bodhisattva practiced for millennia to perfect its wisdom of the Dharma. But that completion, right, upon perfecting the virtues of wisdom and compassion, and the universal mode for all beings to attain Buddhahood themselves, right, then Dharmakara became this Namo Amida Buddha, this Buddha of immeasurable wisdom and immeasurable compassion and empathy for all beings. And so all of the meritorious practice, as I mentioned, that Dharmakara completed, cultivated into this completely fulfilled spiritual virtue for enlightenment, which came together, and called itself Namo Amida Butsu. And it is through this Namo Amida Butsu, this name, that the manifestation of these virtues is being directed to us. So that is the first virtues that's listed in this passage. So there was two virtues, right? One was the virtue that the Bodhisattva attained, and then Master Renyo quotes that we are led to attain virtues, right? So what are those virtues that we attain that Master Renyo refers to? So if Namu Amida Butsu is being directed to us, right, if those are the virtues that are being directed to us, then what are we receiving, or what are we attaining? What are we being enabled to do? Because I don't know about you, but I don't think I can do all of those practices that Dharmakara Bodhisattva did. So in summary, right, Namu Amida Butsu being directed to us is the mind, this fulfilled mind of purity, joy, and the light of wisdom. Right, as I read in my message today. So through sincerely encountering this mind, including this virtuous heart inside of it, when we sincerely encounter it for ourselves, then we are moved to awaken or realize this true and trusting heart and this true and trusting mind and deep joy for the Buddha Dharma that can carry us through life so that we may also attain ultimate nirvana. Now, I put an asterisk here because the words awaken and realize can also be synonymous for enlightenment itself. But, But I think that I would use, for awakening true enlightenment, that I would use a capital A and a capital R. But I'm using a small a or a small r. So we realize it for ourselves, and it's not to say that this is a small realization, but it is one step, the step before true realization. So this true and trusting heart and mind and the deep joy that comes with it for the Buddha Dharma, that's what true Shinjin is. That is what awakens within us, this Shinjin. So this true Shinjin, which is evoked within us, is the result of the working of Tathagata's great compassion, right? Because we don't just awaken one day, like wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, I have deep joy for the Buddha Dharma. I don't think that we do that, right? But when we hear the teaching, hear what Buddha is trying to help us with, right? And hear what kind of virtues Amida Buddha has, the Amida Tathagata has, then we can say, oh wow, this Dharma is truly inconceivable, and wow, this is really, really true, right? If we can realize it in our lives. And so through this, I think we realize when we receive this working, or when we encounter this working of Tathagata's great compassion, we realize that we are beings, that I am a being who has been transmigrating through cycles of suffering since the beginningless past. So beginningless past or beginningless beginning is a term we keep hearing, and it is probably very vague and abstract. But Shakyamuni Buddha says that it's called this because it has no discernible beginning point. Like we can't say, oh, our evil acts started there at that time. Based on my limited understanding of Christianity, there's the story of Adam and Eve and how the original sin started at a certain point. But in the Buddhist worldview, we don't have a point where we can point to and say, that's where our evil started. That's where our karma started. It has no beginning, but it is from the distant past. So there's no discernible point. That's why we say beginningless past or beginningless beginning. Because, right, we are here today, and we've inherited the karma of others that have come before us too, right? With no discernible beginning. And when we realize this, then we realize that we are already embraced within the working of the vow, because Amida Buddha saw that there were beings experiencing this, being in this cycle of experiencing these roots of unhappiness. The roots being our selfish desires that lead to greed, our selfish dislikes which lead to anger, and our ignorance. It is because we are beings like this that Amida Buddha is working to embrace us. So this true Shinjin that is evoked within us, this true and trusting heart and mind and deep joy, simultaneous deep joy for the Buddha Dharma, is this fulfilled spiritual virtue needed for birth in the Pure Land. So it is the greatest trust or acceptance on reliance on the true Buddha Dharma that is the cause for realizing great nirvana. It is through this true Shinjin that we realize that we are a part of or embraced within already the true suchness and ultimate reality, that we are a part of existence. We are not separate from it. And we realize that upon shedding this human form, we will be cut off from our aeons of karmic buildup and be allowed to become Buddha. And so you might be thinking, well, how did you make that leap? That doesn't really make any sense. So I want to, again, share a passage from the larger sutra. Again, I apologize, it might be a little bit dry because I am reading a translation, but I feel it's very important for us to hear. Okay? If there are persons who, having heard the name, let me reiterate. Shakyamuni Buddha says these words to Maitreya. Maitreya is one of the disciples who is supposedly going to be the next upcoming Buddha in the world. If there are persons who, having heard the name of that Buddha, referring to Amida Tathagata, leap and dance with joy and are mindful of the Buddha even once, know that they receive the great benefit that they acquire the unexcelled virtues. If there are sentient beings who hear the teaching of the sutra, they will never retrogress on their way to supreme enlightenment. Therefore, you should wholeheartedly accept, retain, recite, expound, and put this sutra into practice. So this teaching, as I mentioned, I think is inconceivable to us as ordinary beings. It's not something that we can conceive of through our ordinary logic. And so that is why we are instructed or encouraged or urged by Shakyamuni Buddha and the other Buddhas to just hear this name, to just listen to this name and trust it's working. And because we cannot conceive of its working and we want to question it, right? Like, I don't get it. Are you sure this works? Right? It doesn't make any sense. That's a really big leap. This is why Shakyamuni Buddha and Venerable Shinran say that it is the most difficult out of all difficulties. And Shakyamuni Buddha says this. So in the end of the sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha says, in the future, all sutras will become extinct. However, out of compassion and pity, I will ensure that this sutra alone remains for a further 100 years. Those sentient beings who encounter this sutra will attain emancipation in accordance with their aspiration. However, the most difficult of all difficulties is to hear this sutra and accept it with the entrusting heart. Nothing surpasses this difficulty. Therefore, I have thus presented the Dharma, thus preached it, and thus taught it. You should accept it in trust and practice in accord with it. So those were the words of Shakyamuni Buddha in the sutra. So we can, from these passages, we can understand that sincerely hearing this name, sincerely hearing this teaching, and the trust in it that awakens and fulfills the virtue needed to reach ultimate emancipation from this realm of samsara, this realm that we are wandering around ignorant and suffering. And trusting and living in accord with the mind of purity, joy, and the light of wisdom helps to lead us away from living in accord with our minds of selfish desire, which lead to greed, selfish dislikes, which lead to anger, and the darkness of our own ignorance. So, as some conclusory remarks, all of Bodhisattva Dharmakara's merit practices and spiritual virtue are inside Namo Amida Butsu. That is the manifestation of those virtues, which enable us to awaken the fulfilled virtue of true Shinjin, the true trust in reliance that is needed of the Buddha Dharma for us to be liberated from samsara. So everything that Dharmakara Bodhisattva did was for the sake of all beings who have ever experienced the roots of unhappiness and stress, and who could not and cannot do the Bodhisattva practices for themselves, for whatever reason. And Dharmakara Bodhisattva suffered lifetime after lifetime after lifetime for eons in order to perfect this perfect wisdom out of empathy for others, because Dharmakara Bodhisattva wanted there to be a Buddha for others, an immeasurable Buddha for others. And so this was done especially for beings such as myself, who were born in a time without a physical Buddha, and without a physical Buddha would not have a chance to meet with the perfect Dharma, right? And living in this realm, this defiled realm, where my mind and the mind of others is all convoluted by our own thoughts and opinions. And so, again, this was all done so that beings who cannot do bodhisattva practice would not have the opportunity otherwise, and can still have the opportunity to hear the true Dharma and become Buddha. So this is the compassionate mind of Namo Amida Butsu. And by fulfilling all the necessary practices, cultivating the spiritual virtue for the liberation of Dharmakara itself and others being beings in the 10 directions, including myself, Bodhisattva Dharmakara manifested into this formless Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, taking the form of a name or a voice. And so this is the compassionate mind, the Shinjin of Buddha. And then within Namo Amida Butsu, all the spiritual virtues, purity, joy, and wisdom that are needed to enable all beings to fulfill their own spiritual virtues for their own Buddhahood are inside Namo Amida Butsu. And that is why it is written that Amida Tathagata brings all beings to the attainment of virtues needed for Buddhahood. AKA, we are given the spiritual virtue needed for us to be liberated from our roots of unhappiness and suffering on this path of samsara. Samsara made a little bit of a, edit, and so it looks like the same slide. My apologies. But when we sincerely encounter Namo Amida Butsu and sincerely hear all that is inside Buddha's compassionate mind, then we realize that we are beings who have been suffering from our 3 poisons for eons, right? For a long time with no discernible beginning. And that we have been grasped and embraced by Buddha's mind. And we realize that we are the intended recipients of Buddha's perfect wisdom and compassion. So according to Shakyamuni Buddha, Venerable Shinran, and Master Renyo, if and when we sincerely hear this mind, Buddha's mind, then we will be moved to believe, trust, accept, and take refuge in the Buddha's activity, and be moved to use it as a foundation for our own lives. Again, hence, it is said, Amida Tathagata, it is Amida Tathagata that brings all beings to the fulfillment of virtues needed for Buddhahood. And so that is why Master Renyo wrote, attaining the entrusting heart lies in understanding the 18th vow. To understand this vow means to understand what Namo Amida Butsu is. And so when one takes refuge, that is Namo in one thought moment, making aspiration and directing virtue is implied. This means that Amida Tathagata directs virtue to us, foolish beings. This is taught in the larger sutra as bringing all sentient beings to the attainment of virtues. So that concludes my presentation today on this portion of the letter on attaining the entrusting heart, Shinjin. And we will continue, next time, continue with this letter that is very short, yet very, very deep in meaning. And I would like to thank all of you for your patience, because I know that some things that I presented today might seem really abstract. But I think my understanding of this teaching is that it's trying to help us understand the contrast between Namo Amida Buddha and myself. The contrast, right? So what it's not that we have to know or memorize all those things that Buddha did. Like, that's, to me, not the point. We're not supposed to memorize and hold on to those words and say, oh, Dharmakara Bodhisattva did this and this and this and this and this. And like, that's not the point. I think that what we are supposed to try to reflect on for ourselves is to truly understand that there was effort and there is a level of purity and wisdom that is within Namo Amida Butsu. And really think about for ourselves, why did Buddha feel the need to do this? What does that say about me? And what is Buddha trying to help me to realize about my own life? And these are all answers that questions that I feel that we should all ask ourselves, but we will each come to our own answers in our own time. So with that, I would like to open the floor to any questions, comments, or monkus, complaints. I might not have an answer for everything or a good response to everything, but I think this is our time for us to discuss with each other like what we think we heard today.